Alex is a very ordinary boy. He looks ordinary, studies ordinarily, and comes from an ordinary family. No matter where you place him, he doesn't stand out. Occasionally, he feels a bit inferior because his father once suffered from mental illness, spent some time in a mental hospital, and then disappeared. Alex hasn't seen him since he was 6. He feels a bit pitiful, lacking the fatherly love, as his mother is busy earning a living, unable to provide him much tenderness. Later, he got into an ordinary university. In early autumn, he celebrated his 19th birthday. Just entering the university campus, the boys were busy forming cliques, calling each other brothers, and they all enjoyed lively atmospheres. So, many people came to celebrate that night. One of the boys in the dormitory even made friends with some people from society, and one of them showed up that day. Alex had seen him a few times before and admired him a lot. He was around 25, had some money, exuded the unruly air of a social drifter, yet was straightforward and got along well with everyone. Alex felt content if he could achieve what he had by that age. They drank a few bottles of cheap liquor and started talking about women. The guy from society said, "Women may look different, but as long as you sleep with them, they're all the same, with the same bad temper," setting the same rules for him. Recently, he slept with a woman just because he flirted with someone else, and she twisted his ears out of anger. He took off his baseball cap and asked everyone, "Is my ear crooked?" Everyone laughed. Alex, sitting beside him, influenced by alcohol and in high spirits, casually patted his ear, not crooked. Suddenly, Alex froze. At that moment of touching his ear, it was as if Alex's soul left his body and entered another world. In a black and white setting, he saw himself dying in a gruesome car accident. The man was driving, and Alex couldn't see what his car collided with, but like a slow-motion scene from a movie, the windshield shattered, the airbag deployed, and the man bled from 7 orifices, dying on the spot. Unable to resist, Alex touched his ear again. This time, it was normal, and no illusion occurred. The man asked, "Is it crooked or not?" Alex was pulled back into reality, awkwardly smiled, but panic filled his heart. In fact, even in dreams, nothing had been so real. The second time he experienced the same shock was when a roommate called him to have a late-night snack. The northern sky was already getting cold, and the guy, holding a box of just-purchased beer, asked Alex to help him wrap a scarf around his neck. Alex accidentally touched his ear, and suddenly, he entered that illusion again. In the illusion, this guy was winter swimming, and from his head poking out of the water, you could see the thick white breath he exhaled. But soon, he stopped moving and sank. Alex could even see clearly that the water was not clean, with garbage suspended in it. The scene was as real as if he had experienced it himself. Alex dared not say a word, accompanied him to have a late-night snack, and watched him pursue a senior girl. Just before winter break, Alex visited his hometown. In the meantime, he received a call from a classmate, talking about the guy signing up for the citywide winter swimming competition and unfortunately drowning. Alex was stunned. So, he could foresee others' deaths. Since the day he turned 19. Amidst grief, he immediately touched his mom's ear. Fortunately, she died of natural causes, aged and not in good shape, not even reaching 100 but over 90. He immediately thought of the car accident scene with the guy from society. No, he had to save him. He promptly returned to campus, invited the guy from society for dinner, and told him not to drive for the next 2 years. The guy asked why, and Alex said because driving was unsafe. The guy laughed loudly, saying he must be an artistic youth, out of touch with reality. The truly unlucky ones could even get hit by falling glass while walking on the street. There was no safe place in the world. Alex carefully recalled that in the illusion where the guy had the accident, he was wearing a thin jacket, which should be late summer or early autumn. Moreover, he looked young, just like now. In other words, the incident wasn't too far from the present. Alex decided to rescue him at all costs. When the weather warmed up a bit, the guy from society put on that thin jacket. Alex started going to the residential area where he lived to puncture his car tires whenever he had the chance. The guy from society went crazy because his tires seemed to be punctured by nails every other day, preventing him from driving. One day, Alex saw him leaving while puncturing his car tires. The guy was wearing that deep blue thin jacket that Alex had memorized. His heart tightened, and he punctured 5 or 6 holes in his tires, then scattered triangular nails on his inevitable route. The guy from society got in the car, found the tires were punctured again. He grumbled and replaced them with the spare tire, only to have all the wheels damaged a few meters later. Frustrated, he made calls, cursed the property management, called for rescue, and then left in a taxi, instructing his new girlfriend to wait in the underground parking lot to handle these troubles. Alex breathed a sigh of relief. Unexpectedly, the next day, he received tragic news. The guy from society rented a car to go to the neighboring city for business, stopped on the highway to urinate, and was crushed into minced meat by a truck. How could this happen? It turned out that seeing was a curse, something unchangeable. Alex fell into immense pain. His life had just begun, yet he was forced to witness its conclusion, and everything seemed surreal. What is life, after all? What is its meaning? Should he accept the normality of death, or should he let himself cry, lament, and feel lost? His young mind couldn't wrap around these questions. He began avoiding touching other people's ears. If he hadn't experienced it personally, he might have been curious, wanting to touch everyone's ears in the world. But after these two incidents, he found that he couldn't bear the burden, and he didn't want to know anything anymore. He became more silent and reserved, also thinner. Until the second semester of sophomore year, he developed feelings for a girl. This girl had flawless white skin, a slender figure, short stature, and a perpetual smile in her eyes. She was delicate yet sunny. They both chose to learn French and often attended classes together. One day, the girl said, "Hi," and he involuntarily replied, "Hi." She told him, "Alex, you left your iPad charger in the public lecture hall yesterday. I put it away for you." Alex thanked her, and she said, "When should I give it to you?" Alex asked, "When are you available?" She said, "Anytime." So, they decided to have dinner. It was on a small path behind the school, eating skewers. The girl's name was Zoe, easygoing and content with everything. When eating seaweed skewers, she said the seaweed was so thick and delicious. With meatball skewers, she exclaimed about their firm texture, and with tofu skin skewers, she mentioned that soy products are rich in protein and vitamin C. Everything satisfied her, and everything seemed good to her. They spent less than 20 yuan, and when they returned to school, she happily circled around him like a little dog. Her joy was particularly infectious, and for a moment, Alex wanted to lift her up, carry her on his shoulders, and love her for a lifetime. Their dates were spontaneous. He wanted to see her every day, and whenever he asked, she would come out. They explored the entire backstreet, watched late-night movies to save money, he taught her to play pool, and she taught him to play murder mystery games. Once, they pretended to be sophisticated and went to view properties, acting like they were really considering buying a house. After leaving, both burst into laughter. They probably couldn't afford those houses in their lifetime, but they enjoyed pretending together, as if everything had become real in their illusion, and all the beauty was waiting for them. One day, they went for hot pot. Alex helped Zoe blanch vegetables, accidentally getting scalded along the way. He sucked in a breath. Zoe said, "Quick, touch your ear, it won't blister if you touch it." Alex touched his own ear and suddenly reached out to touch Zoe's ear again. In an instant, he entered the illusion, and Zoe was falling from a building. She was still very young, definitely not yet 30. When she hit the ground, her limbs were twisted, and she no longer resembled herself. Zoe asked, "What's wrong with you?" Alex took a few minutes before saying, "Oh, my hand, it's probably going to blister." Zoe immediately got up and bought him a box of burn ointment. A small brown tube, and when she brought it back, there was still her sweat on top. Alex wanted to cry so badly but couldn't. He couldn't reveal his secret, no one would believe him. He also couldn't fathom why Zoe would jump off a building, perhaps she had an extreme side unknown to others. In any case, in that moment, he felt they might not have a future. He couldn't accept his partner leaving at such a young age. What he wanted was to grow old together, a lifetime together. He didn't want arguments, madness, or suicide. He definitely didn't want such a cruel ending. Everyone thought Alex was in a relationship with Zoe. However, they had never even held hands. No sweet words were exchanged, and there was no formal pursuit. This continued sporadically until their junior year when Zoe had to go for an internship. She asked, "What do you really think?" "Let it be." "What does let it be mean?" "If you think it will naturally have a result, I'll go all out. If you think let it be means wait and see, then I'll set myself free." Alex couldn't come up with an answer. Zoe said, "I understand." She went to work for a water purifier company and didn't contact him again. Countless nights, he wanted to send her a message but didn't know where to start. If he were someone who could change others' destinies, he would surely have saved her. Unfortunately, he knew he couldn't. After graduation, he met another girl, plump and simple-looking. He touched her ears, and the outcome was old age and a peaceful passing. The girl treated him well, and that's how they began talking about marriage. 2 years later, they got married and had a daughter. The first thing he did was touch his daughter's ears, but he couldn't discern anything. Maybe babies were too small for him to sense anything. Soon, they took out a loan and bought a very small house. Life had its ups and downs. Unexpectedly, one day, he encountered Zoe again. Zoe was installing a water purification system in their neighborhood. He saw her from afar, unsure whether to greet her or not. He stood there, filled with sorrow. Zoe smiled and said, "Do you live here?" He said yes. Zoe said, "Help me fill out a survey, please." In the survey, there was a column asking about marital status and whether he had children. He truthfully filled in the information. Zoe said, "You're married with children now. Congratulations." He silently returned the pen and paper to her, looking at her face. She had gained a little weight, but her eyes were as bright as they were in the beginning. She wore a shirt and a small skirt, exuding the aura of a professional woman. The day she had envisioned wasn't far away. He vividly remembered that in his illusion, she was like this, mature, calm, around 25 or 26. The process of her falling was lengthy, with an expression that accepted all outcomes. In an instant, his heart felt like it was being twisted with a knife. Was she in love with someone else now? Had she completely lost hope in the world? Was the wound he gave her also a part of her life that she couldn't bear? Zoe didn't give him a chance to ask anything. She quickly said goodbye, smiling with distance, like a flight attendant. In the neighborhood, there is a particularly cute child. One day, when Alex went to hold him, he touched the child's ear. The scene of an elderly person's death rushed to him, and he asked, "How old is he?" The child's grandma said he just turned 6 yesterday. It turns out that after the age of 6, one can see such things. Suddenly, Alex remembered his biological father who disappeared when he was 6. His father must know something. He called his mom, and she told him that his dad had a mental illness. His mind was always troubled. Before Alex turned 6, his father had to hold and touch his ears every night to fall asleep. After turning 6, his condition deteriorated, he babbled all day, and had to be sent to a mental hospital. One day, when she went back to get something for him, he insisted on coming along. After signing a note at the hospital, they took a bus. In the crowded bus, she only realized he was missing when they got off. She didn't bother looking too hard, considering him a burden, so she let it be. 6 years old, disappeared. It must be related to the end of his life. Alex decided to find his father and get some answers. Because he couldn't see anything when he touched his own ears. Alex started searching everywhere, visiting every blood relative of his father. The great-grandmother of his father had a cousin, who had no contact with his family. After she moved out of the mountain area, her household registration remained in the village. This means she still has property in their hometown. Alex went to visit her. The old lady said, "I have a small house and a bit of farmland in my hometown. Your dad does live there. I don't know why he insists on living there. I think he's quite pitiful, only receiving a few $100 from him every year." Alex got the address and rushed to find his father. On the hillside, he found his father's place. Before a proper meeting, he stood at the door and knew for sure this was his father's home. The watchdog didn't have ears. His father must be more powerful, even able to sense the death of animals. The wooden door was rotten, the adobe walls were cracked. Alex knocked on the door, and a dark old man came out, asking, "Who's there?" They stood there, a bit awkward due to the closeness. After a while, his father said, "Come in." The furnishings inside were old. The water jug had peeled paint, there were black marks here and there. Except for a light bulb, there were no electrical appliances. There were only hoes, sickles, and shovels, cherished like treasures in the corner. The hoe seemed to have been used for many years, there was patina on the handle. The connection point with the wooden stick had a new triangular piece wedged in, a clear sign of someone who loved labor, uninterested in fame and wealth. His father seemed mentally stable. He poured water for Alex and said, "Wait a bit before drinking, it's hot." Alex choked up and said, "Why? Dad." The old man was silent for a moment. Then he asked if Alex had a daughter. He said yes. The old man said having a daughter was good, the curse in their lineage had finally ended. "Have you seen something of mine?" He didn't answer, smiling apologetically, saying there was no tea, only plain water. There were tears in his eyes. Alex said, "What have you seen of mine?" The old man said, "Don't force a dying man like me." Alex wanted to touch his ears, but the old man blocked him, saying, "I don't want to know." You started noticing when you were 19, right?" So did I. He chuckled, a person who knows their fate, but battles against fate. How can you live here alone, without contacting us? What if you get sick? Is there a hospital nearby? Is the food you grow enough for yourself? Have you completely disconnected from society? Does the government provide you money? How do you survive? Surviving is easy, living a colorful life is the challenge. I didn't want to live a colorful life. The chickens outside started crowing, they were about to return to their coop. The old man said, "Don't come looking for me again. If you do, you'll force me to move, and moving isn't easy. Are you really this heartless? Have dinner before you leave, the chickens just laid eggs. I'll stir-fry a couple of dishes for you." In anger, Alex left. As he reached the door, his father shouted from behind, "Be good to that girl. Her time is running out. You know who I'm talking about." Alex took a tricycle, a minibus, a public bus, and a train, traveling for 2 days before returning home. Throughout the journey, tears flowed incessantly. He guessed that his father had understood some mystery but couldn't bear to tell him. As for the Zoe his father mentioned, he couldn't treat her well. After all, he was already married. How could he be good to someone else? He hadn't cried so hard even when he was bullied as a child. This time, he cried for the grand events in life that he couldn't control, crying for the fact that his love and hatred had no place to anchor. 6 months later, Zoe came to Alex's home to inspect the pipes of the water purification system. Alex's wife had gone to work, leaving only him, his daughter, and 3 staff members in the small house. Treating Alex's daughter like any other ordinary customer, Zoe smiled and said, "Should I be called Auntie? Haha. This child is so well behaved." Alex went to get her some fruits, and suddenly, his daughter ran to the balcony. When Alex heard her scream and rushed over, he saw his daughter somehow breaking a piece of glass and falling off the balcony. Zoe swiftly caught her, with one hand holding the child and the other clinging to the balcony edge. "Save the child first," she shouted. They were both holding onto each other, and Alex couldn't pull them up. Instinctively, he grabbed the child's small hand and, after pulling her up, the other 2 staff members also rushed over. Just a second late, Zoe couldn't hold on anymore and fell. He watched her fall with wide-open eyes. If only he had been a split second faster, he could have grabbed her. When she fell, she was calm, even content, accepting the inevitable outcome. Alex cried out in madness, watching her fall, completely helpless. Finally, the sound of her landing was very light, a soft thud, like a piece of clothing. Screams erupted around, and her limbs twisted and contorted, just like in his hallucination. So, it was like this, unexpectedly like this. He knelt there crying and shouting, and 3 people couldn't move him. His wife rushed back, Alex's mom came, and many people from Zoe's workplace also arrived. They argued about compensation, discussing the responsibilities of the property management and the developers. Zoe's parents, who were already in poor health, went directly to the hospital upon hearing the news. They said they didn't want a single penny, just their daughter. Both the workplace and the property management arranged teams to console them in the hospital, but Alex couldn't do anything, his mind was in a daze. More than 10 days after the incident, his wife suggested moving back to her parents' house as this place was not auspicious. While packing things, Alex found a photo in the family album, a picture of Zoe during their university days. She was thin back then, smiling sweetly at the camera, clean, beautiful, not caring about what the future might hold. It took about 4 months to settle everything related to this incident. Alex and his wife discussed that Zoe was the only daughter in her family. Now that she was gone, as a couple, they should fulfill their duty to honor her. His wife also agreed. Zoe's father had been paralyzed for many years, fortunately living nearby. Alex and his wife often visited, bringing some groceries, cleaning up, pushing him out to enjoy the sun, treating the elderly couple as their own parents. Although Zoe's mother didn't show a pleasant face, Zoe's father was grateful. Every time he saw them, he was polite. One weekend, Alex wanted to take the old man downstairs for a walk. The mattress also needed some sun. He placed the mattress on the old man's legs and pushed his wheelchair into the elevator. Perhaps because the wheelchair was unusually heavy that day, the wheel seemed stuck after a few pushes. So, he turned around, took a couple of steps back intending to pull the wheelchair inside. However, as soon as he entered the elevator, before the doors closed, the elevator started descending. He instinctively let go of the wheelchair. He didn't have time to react, his upper body was still outside, and his lower body was being torn downward. His biggest realization at that moment was not the pain but, I understand. His time of death lasted for an hour. When the rescue team arrived, he was still conscious, and as he was being pushed into the hospital, he remained conscious. But all along, the only thing in his mind was that phrase, "I understand." He felt an unprecedented guilt, for Zoe, for his wife, for his daughter, for his father, for his mother, for the world. His mother, who was busy supporting him, couldn't spare the energy to speak softly to him. Her hard work allowed him to afford an iPad in college, to treat female students to hot pot and skewers. His father, having foreseen his fate, had to cut ties with him early. How many people in the world could withstand such separation and farewell? His daughter had just learned to dance the bunny dance, but he had neglected her too much for the sake of mortgage and a better life. His wife was devoted to him, unaware that he had someone else in his heart. And that someone else, who loved only him throughout her life, sacrificed herself for him in the end. During the intermediate state, he saw his father. It turned out his father had already passed away. He came to pick him up. At this moment, Alex felt like he was shedding his skin, transforming into a different person. He saw mountains, rivers, and the vastness of the universe, things he had never imagined. His emotions were no longer human emotions but more like waking up from a great dream, tending towards tranquility. He saw his wife's ending once again. She was serene, probably destined for a fortunate second half of her life. He felt relieved and turned to face his father. His father said, "My child," and handed his hand to him without saying anything. Two dogs without ears ran around them. After walking a while, he saw Zoe. She was still smiling. He saw from her eyes that Zoe understood everything but had no intention of blaming him. She just smiled and stood at the desolate boundary. Using the last bit of his earthly attachment, Alex said to her, "I loved you." Zoe replied, "I did too." She didn't take a step forward, just watched him. Her face became unclear, merging the Zoe he first met, the one in the photo, and the one falling, all mysteriously unified into a very abstract image. The last thing left in his mind was a simple, pure, accepting, and compassionate smile.